On this Saturday night, murder in Mexico. Canadians killed near a well-known tourist town. The search for a suspect and how Canada is responding. Treacherous conditions. An Arctic blast plunges the Eastern U.S. into a dangerous deep freeze. Investigating the Tonga eruption. What scientists are learning about the volcanic powerhouse in the South Pacific.
Have you seen the girl?
And leaving her stamp on music history.
At 102 years old, one doesn't expect to even be remembered.
Honoring Canada's First Lady of Jazz.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Sophie Louis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We are learning more tonight about a deadly shooting in Mexico involving Canadians. 3 people were shot at a popular resort. It happened yesterday at Hotel Xcaret, just south of Playa del Carmen, a tourist area along Mexico's Caribbean coast. Mexican authorities say 2 men were killed and a woman is recovering in hospital. They also allege that the gunman in the brazen attack is a Canadian. He remains at large. Michael Couteur has more on the deadly shooting and a warning: this story may be disturbing to some viewers.
Webcam images capture what was nearly a picture-perfect day at the Mexican resort. 5 bangs believed to be gunshots ring out. This video appears to show the scene afterwards, with 3 bodies laying on the floor in an eating area.
Definitely a shock that it happened in a resort.
Canadian travel advisor Lori Gold lives 10 minutes from the resort, and while she was surprised, she doesn't feel less safe.
You know, people have to realize that life is still life, even in paradise, but typically it does not affect tourists at all. It is not anywhere near tourism. It is really super targeted.
Local police claim the shooting was linked to organized crime. Reports say 2 men are dead, while 1 woman is in hospital. All 3 are believed to be Canadian. The gunman seen in this photo, released by the local Secretary of Public Security, is still on the loose. Global Affairs Canada won't confirm the identities of the 3 Canadians, but did say consular officials are working with local authorities and are providing consular assistance. While locals seem to feel safe, there has been a spate of shootings in recent months that are getting a lot of attention because they were in tourist areas or involved tourists. In October, an American and German were killed after getting caught in the apparent crossfire of rival drug dealers. A month later, at least 10 gunmen stormed the beach of a luxury hotel near Cancun.
In the past, you have 4, 5 major criminal organizations. Now, because of different factors, you have 45, 50 different criminal groups fighting for the territory.
The Mexican government is trying to address the crimes while protecting the lucrative tourist industry, according to Walter McKay, an expert in policing and security in Mexico.
The tourist police, they call them, who are trained in English and other popular language such as German, so they can deal with tourists who need assistance because they have a vested interest to protect this billion-dollar-plus economy.
An economy that could take a hit after an apparent organized crime hit at a resort. Michael Couture, Global News, Ottawa.
To the situation in Ukraine, the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv has reportedly requested the evacuation of all non-essential staff as fears mount of an imminent Russian invasion. The first shipment of a $200 million arms delivery promised by President Joe Biden arrived in Kyiv overnight. The U.S. Embassy says the shipment demonstrates its firm commitment to Ukraine's sovereign right to self-defense. Russia has amassed tens of thousands of troops along its borders with Ukraine, even as Moscow denies it has any plans to invade. And Russia continues to flex its military muscles, stepping up drills in Belarus. Moscow says fighter jets have begun relocating for military exercises to be held near its border with NATO members Poland and Lithuania and close to Ukraine. Russia's defense ministry says 2 battalions carrying anti-aircraft missile systems are also moving to western Belarus. Now to the pandemic, and there are early indications the Omicron wave may have reached its peak nationally. Over the last week, confirmed case rates have dropped, and sewage surveillance is also showing positive signs. Wastewater testing is an alternate method for tracking COVID-19. It's being championed for providing important information on outbreaks. But as Ross Lord explains, not all public health authorities are sold on its merits.
Researchers are not surprised wastewater testing is emerging as a go-to method for finding COVID-19. Developers of Alberta's system say it detects COVID-19 up to a week before positive cases are confirmed clinically, making it a valuable tool in pandemic response.
For example, the reinstatement of masking in Calgary, that decision was informed in part by wastewater testing, and that really shows that wastewater testing can be part of the evidence base that policymakers use to make these critical decisions in how we navigate the pandemic.
Not surprising when you consider the virus survives a long time in the gastrointestinal tract, and samples are contributed unknowingly by everyone when they go to the bathroom.
I think what we've seen in Alberta is that this technology really works. We had to iron out some kinks like other teams across Canada and around the world.
It seems smoothing out some kinks is ongoing. A team that developed a wastewater testing system at Dalhousie University raised eyebrows by claiming it found the Omicron variant in Halifax in mid-November, weeks before it was publicly reported in Nova Scotia, even before it was reported by South Africa. But Nova Scotia's top doctor was not convinced.
We've actually had conversations with the researchers, and what it turned out, they were detecting the Alpha variant. They actually weren't detecting Omicron. So it's still a research tool that has yet to be validated in many ways.
Dalhousie University says the school stands by their team's finding. A statement from the Nova Scotia government says a different sample suggests the presence of Omicron, but the finding has not been confirmed. As those test results are tested, Calgary researchers are flushed with success. Their findings are posted online as real-time data showing concentrations of COVID in various parts of the city. With wastewater testing methods evolving, researchers hope it helps Canada detect more threats to public health in future, COVID-19 or others. Ross Lord, Global News, Halifax.
If you are planning to head to the U.S., remember there are new rules in effect. As of today, all foreign travelers, including Canadians who are entering the U.S. at land borders, ferry terminals, or airports, must show proof they are fully vaccinated. Non-U.S. citizens must also declare whether their trip is for essential or non-essential reasons. Well, the eastern U.S. is being slammed by winter storms, frigid temperatures, snow, and ice hitting the region from north to south, freezing power lines, roads, and runways, and prompting warnings to drivers as far south as Texas and Louisiana to stay off the roads. Jennifer Johnson reports.
Snow and ice sent a Delta Airlines plane skidding off the runway at Raleigh-Durham International Airport Friday night as severe winter weather hit the Carolinas and a section of the eastern U.S. No one was hurt in that incident, but 2 medics were injured after icy roads sent this ambulance careening off a North Carolina highway. South of the Outer Banks, thousands have been left without power. The National Weather Service issued an ice storm warning for the Moorhead, North Carolina region for the first time in history.
We're concerned about maybe some families who can't stay warm, and we need people to check on their friends and neighbors.
Half the country has been hit by this January Arctic blast. Temperatures 20 degrees below normal on average.
I got my boots, I got my clothes, my hat, scarf, everything.
Wind chills hit minus 31 degrees in Minneapolis. Brownsville, Texas recorded its 5th winter storm warning ever. Warming stations were set up for people in San Antonio. State officials throughout the South have been begging motorists to stay off the roads as they work to keep them treated with salt.
We're going to try to find any ice and take care of it. We're going to mark it as soon as we can, but you might be the motorist who discovers it first.
The big freeze seemed to freeze over ponds and lakes, but firefighters warned that can be deceiving. In New York, 3 children had to be rescued after going through the ice on a pond.
Quarters, we do have people in the water.
And in New Jersey, a policeman's body camera was rolling as a skater went through the ice.
We got more people in.
Firefighters say when it's this cold, it's hard to imagine the ice isn't frozen solid.
You don't know the thickness of the ice. Do not go on the ice.
The bone-chilling temperatures have millions of Americans bundled up, slipping and sliding, and forecasters warn the deep freeze will stick around through the end of the month. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
On the West Coast, winds whipping more than 100 kilometers an hour are fueling a wildfire in Northern California, forcing evacuations near Big Sur. The Colorado Canyon fire has grown to more than 600 hectares and is only 5% contained. Flames spread quickly last night after months of drought conditions, and residents were told to pack up and leave by 11 p.m. No injuries have been reported. The cause of that fire is under investigation. Coming up, Havana syndrome, how the CIA's search for answers has only deepened the mystery. New details tonight about the mysterious illness that's plagued hundreds of U.S. and Canadian diplomats. Havana syndrome first emerged in Cuba in 2016. It was initially feared a foreign power may have been launching sonic attacks against embassy staff using high-frequency acoustic waves. But as Reggie Cicchini explains, a new CIA report suggests otherwise.
It's a health crisis that's vexed officials for more than 5 years, the so-called Havana syndrome that's beset hundreds of diplomats with cognitive and balance issues. It had been assumed it was an act of aggression, perhaps a weapon used by a foreign nation. But on Wednesday, the CIA rattled nerves by ruling out hostile acts.
Unless we see their data as to how they came to their analysis, just making this broad blanket statement is worthless.
The interim findings lay blame on environmental factors or pre-existing conditions, in many cases that occurred outside of Cuba.
Something happened to those people in Havana.
Dr. James Giordano has consulted with the State Department in its investigation and says while the vast majority of cases are circumstantial, those initial cases in Cuba are worrisome.
These individuals presented not only with subjective symptoms, but with objective clinical signs that are both qualitative and quantitative that support that something physical happened to those individuals.
Mark Polymeropoulos came down with the symptoms while serving in Moscow.
This was the most terrifying experience of my life.
He's concerned the CIA hasn't investigated enough reports, while lawyers argue it's all about saving face.
Our view is that this is a public relations response because many of their people have been declining to go overseas to serve in different capacities.
It's not just American diplomats searching for answers. More than 24 Canadians are suing Ottawa, accusing the government of mishandling their concerns.
The Canadian government, I believe, has not been transparent on this.
The case argues Ottawa hasn't done enough to protect its staff.
The diplomats, in our view, have been forgotten and essentially thrown under the bus.
Amid the search for answers, new cases have been reported, including an incident in Vietnam ahead of a visit by the vice president last August. The U.S. now investigates these as anomalous health incidents, although Giordano believes a directed energy weapon can't be ruled out.
The availability, viability, and therefore validity of these types of devices is apparent and has been recognized for a long time.
With no definitive explanation for dozens of cases, the investigations do continue, only without accusations that could lead to increased political tensions. Reggie Cicchini, Global News, Washington.
Next, the push to understand the massive volcanic eruption that left parts of Tonga in ruins. Heavy rains have caused widespread damage in the Peruvian town of Machu Picchu, cutting off access to the world-famous ruins. Officials say floods and landslides have washed away railroads and bridges, forcing the closure of Peru's most popular tourist attraction. At least one person has been reported missing. More international aid arrived in Tonga today, a week after an undersea volcanic eruption and subsequent tsunami hit the Pacific island nation. A Japanese plane delivered emergency supplies, including cleaning equipment and much-needed drinking water. Australia and New Zealand have also sent emergency shipments this week. Well, the people of Tonga are now in recovery mode, trying to clean up some of the catastrophic damage left behind. But there's also other work underway to understand why the massive eruption happened. As Mike Armstrong reports, scientists had been watching this volcano for years, and some are hoping their data will lead to answers.
Every aspect of this eruption will be analyzed: the explosion, the ash cloud, the shock wave. But one of the first things being studied is simply the timeline.
The evidence is suggesting now that the system was priming.
Glyn Williams-Jones is a volcanologist with Simon Fraser University. He says right now his concern is for the people of Tonga, but that there is an importance to understanding what happened because it could happen again. The Tonga volcano has a major eruption about every 1,000 years. But when it happens, it doesn't just happen once.
There's a very good chance that we will have renewed eruptions, maybe not of the same size, the same scale, but this could certainly go on for quite a few years.
Now, figuring out the sequence of events is going to be important, starting with when the volcano started popping out of the water again. In December of 2014, it created an island between two islands. After several months, it stabilized enough that there were expeditions.
Two French explorers who were sailing past the island on their worldwide voyage became NASA's eyes and ears, collecting some of the very first images and samples of the interior island.
Now, if this volcano seems small, that's because only a fraction of it was visible. It was actually massive. The part that could be seen was just a small portion of the rim around the crater.
It's your iceberg. You know, the vast majority of this volcano is underwater.
Now, last month, the volcano started puffing again, letting out pressure. It was being watched. This satellite image was just prior to the eruption and seems to show the middle part of the island had slipped back underwater.
This disappearance is very interesting.
Volcanologist John Sticks says there are theories as to what happened. It could be that the recent puffing was just pressure building and that led to the eruption, but the fact the island disappeared may mean something else. The puffing could have been the magma chamber letting out pressure until there wasn't enough to hold up the roof. It could have collapsed, leading to the island slipping underwater and then the eruption.
So I think time will tell if this is the case or not, but I think it's definitely at least a possibility at this stage.
Understanding what happened will take time. Satellites only tell a part of the picture. To see underwater and what's left will take ships and sonar equipment remapping the ocean floor. For now, getting close enough to do that is still too dangerous. Mike Armstrong, Global News.
Tributes are pouring in for a revered Zen Buddhist monk who helped spread the practice of mindfulness in the West. Thich Nhat Hanh died peacefully in Vietnam at the age of 95. He was a prominent Buddhist monk, peace activist, and leading voice in opposition to the Vietnam War. He was exiled from Vietnam for 39 years over his mission to end the conflict. Thich Nhat Hanh lived much of his adult life at a retreat he founded in France, but spent his final years in Vietnam at the monastery where he was ordained. Today, the Dalai Lama tweeted, "The best way we can pay tribute to him is to continue his work to promote peace in the world." Next, how Canadians are honoring the remarkable careers of two women decades after they first made history. Well, she's known as one of the greatest jazz singers ever to grace the stage in Canada. And now Eleanor Collins is making history once again. The 102-year-old legend is being honored by Canada Post with her very own stamp. As Catherine Urquhart reports, it's the latest distinction in Collins' decades-long career.
Eleanor Collins is a Canadian legend.
Have you seen the girl?
Known as the First Lady of Jazz.
Still in the game.
Now 102 years old, she has received another honor. Canada Post has unveiled a stamp featuring Collins.
I feel wonderful and honored. You know, at 102 years old, one doesn't expect to even be remembered.
Born in Alberta, Collins started performing in the 1930s, later starring in The Eleanor Show, making her the first black woman to headline a TV show in North America. Over the years, she performed with greats like Dizzy Gillespie and Oscar Peterson. More recently, she shared the stage with musician Marcus Mosley.
She carries herself with such dignity and with such grace. And when she stands on that stage and starts to sing, something comes alive and you're enraptured. She's gifted, she's talented, and she knows how to use those gifts that she has.
Collins also faced racism. When she moved to BC, white neighbors once petitioned against her black family living in the same area. In response, Collins volunteered as a music teacher at her children's school to help break down barriers.
To really have someone affirm your work and life on a postage stamp, ooh, that is something.
The new stamp of Collins was illustrated by David Beliveau. Friends say it's about time she received the honor, and they're grateful it is being released during her lifetime.
I love her. I love her forthrightness, her honesty, her commitment to believing in the positive. She's a living example of that philosophy.
I'm hungry still.
Catherine Urquhart, Global News, Vancouver.
That is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Sophie Louie.
And liftoff of the space shuttle.
Tonight, we leave you with a special step back in time to celebrate Canada's giant leap forward in space history. 30 years ago today, Dr. Roberta Bondar blasted off, becoming Canada's first woman and the world's first neurologist in space.
The emotion of actually seeing it. I'm a scientist, right? We all learn that the Earth is the third rock from the sun, but seeing it in real time, getting above and seeing the edge of the planet and having it rotate silently below the window, it was amazing to look off and see starlight that doesn't twinkle and to see an unfathomable black. Those are all the things that I remember.
Bondar spent 8 days on board NASA's Space Shuttle Discovery conducting a groundbreaking study. To this day, her work up there and at home has helped cultivate curiosity and inspire generations of Canadians. Thanks for watching and have a good night.